Welcome back to Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I'm Elena Pinto. Before we get back to our roundup of state reports from here in the United States, there's a lot going on around the world. Perhaps the most interesting development this week comes from the South American country of Colombia, where for decades the cartels down there controlled the market traffic and in some cases the government. Now, the head of the government in Colombia, President Gustavo Petro, is asking his Congress to legalize the plant medicine to decrease the violence that has accompanied that enterprise for years. Cannabis in Colombia has been legal for medicinal purposes since 2016 and industrial purposes since 2021. For adult use, cannabis has been decriminalized for home grow, possession, and consumption since 1994. Now it's time to move, though, from South America to Europe, where Ben Stevens reports on the progress of Switzerland's launch of their adult use market.
I'm Ben Stevens with Business of Cannabis with this week's European Cannabis update for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. The preliminary results for Switzerland's pioneering adult use cannabis trials have been published by the University of Lausanne in conjunction with the University of Applied Sciences Northwestern Switzerland, showing promising early results. 7 such trials are taking place across Switzerland, with the first beginning in 2023 and around 7,000 participants currently involved. These allow for small-scale legalization of the sale of cannabis for recreational purposes, with a view to studying how different sales methods impact public health and consumption. Flying in the face of arguments that legalization threatens public health, the early findings suggest that if there is a change in consumption patterns, it is established in the direction of lower-risk consumption methods like vaping. Furthermore, despite concerns about adverse social impacts on the communities where the trials are taking place, no disturbance of public order was observed around the points of sale, and no leakage of the cannabis from the trials into the illicit market was observed. With a full report expected in the coming months, the early signs paint an optimistic picture for Switzerland's recently announced full adult use legalization project, with these pilot trials aimed at establishing a model for the best possible framework to sell cannabis for recreational purposes. Meanwhile, in the UK, long-running efforts to become the first country in Europe to fully regulate CBD products have finally made some meaningful progress. The Food Standards Agency, which is overseeing the novel foods approval process for thousands of CBD products, has finally put another 5 applications through to the final stage since the start of the year, nearly double the total number approved in 2024. However, this process also comes with setbacks. The FSA has recently removed over 100 products from the public list, which allows products already on the market to remain on sale without full approval, meaning they are now ineligible to stay on the market. Businesses remain frustrated at the length of the process and the severe restrictions put on both THC content and the proposed acceptable daily intake of CBD with these products. That's all for this week's European Cannabis Report. I'm Ben Stevens with Business of Cannabis, reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
One nation that continues its fledgling export business to Europe is Canada. That's where Debbie Facey reports from every week.
This is Debbie Facey with your Canadian Coast to Coast Cannabis News Report. So what we have in Canada this week is the new regulations are going to be launched on March 12th, which is going to be including new laws surrounding the packaging that we have here in Canada, which is now going to be see-through for any dried cannabis. Also, we're going to be able to have the microcultivation growth be able to utilize now 800 meters versus the smaller 200 meters that they were having to work with. This is going to be something that's going to be great for our industry, especially due to the fact that many of our products consumers can't see, know, or even be aware of what they're going to be smoking, and this way just ensures way more accountability on both parties. Next story is we have the growth in pre-rolls here in Canada. Pre-rolls have seen a leap compared to the edibles and just overall dried flower categories, and this is due to the fact that they are a much easier way to consume, easier way to hide, as well as they have made them very, very, very affordable in some cases, which is great for many of the consumers that just like to toke and go. This is Debbie Facey with your Canadian Coast to Coast Cannabis News Report. Peace.
Back here in the United States, we have three stories from California. Last week, the 2024 annual report by the Department of Cannabis Control was released. In that report, the size of the #1 revenue producing state in the country had a little trouble with recalls of products. In fact, there were 63 recalls of 259 different products. One good factoid from that report is the fact that legal cannabis production increased by double digits. That increase was just under 12% to 1.4 million pounds in 2024, which is good. However, when you consider that the illicit market was estimated to be 11.4 million pounds, you understand that the impact of the legal grows and production still pales in comparison. Of course, no one knows the exact amount of legacy market cannabis California still ships out of the state, but there is still plenty of room for a shift once California figures out the right formula to increase the legal market and shrink the illegal one. One more business note from California. Safe Harbor Financial, that had been moving towards receivership, received some bailout help from the Colorado Credit Union, which reduced some of their debt in order to keep them operational. Now let's check in with Marianne Corsagi in Oregon.
I'm Marianne from Alibi with the Oregon Cannabis Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. A lawsuit has been filed by 2 Oregon cannabis businesses to overturn Measure 119, which requires a labor peace agreement for most cannabis businesses. The plaintiffs argue that the newly enacted law violates employers' free speech rights, and also that the state is preempted by the National Labor Relations Act. One question is whether the NLRA applies, as cannabis is illegal federally. Also, this week has been a terrible week for cannabis businesses in Portland. Data is still coming in, but rumors are that between 5 and 10 different businesses have been hit by a crew of smash and grab robberies. The Cannabis Industry Alliance of Oregon, CHOW, is meeting Monday night to discuss this crisis and share solutions. If you're in town, would love to have you attend. That's the Oregon Cannabis Report. I'm Marianne with Alibi for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
In Illinois, one of the nation's largest multi-state operators, Ayr Wellness, is moving out. At the same time, they are putting more of an effort into increasing their footprint in Florida, an all-medical market. Ayr will be selling their 4 retail stores where they were never able to achieve scale or the vertical integration needed to compete. With more from Illinois, here's Mark Allen, our Chicago clone guy.
What's up, everybody? Mark Allen, the Chicago clone guy, here with Bird, tuning in from just outside of Chicago, Illinois, for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Thanks for tuning in. Lots going on here in Illinois, Chicagoland, as always. Unfortunately, not the greatest news, but in Richland County, Illinois, 2 parents decided to send their 5-year-old to school, kindergarten, with a bunch of cannabis concentrates, and some paraphernalia in their literally clear breakfast lunchbox. So the teachers saw all of it. They called the police. The police went to their house to arrest them, which I didn't really like that, even though it was very stupid. But then the police found meth. So these meth heads sent their kids to school with cannabis. Fortunately, I guess, luckily it wasn't a meth sandwich. But in other news, DuPage County, Illinois, good news, dismissed 19 cannabis DUIs because of the bad blood test results that we were talking about not too long ago. Try saying those words fast in a row. But that's great for DuPage County to dismiss those 19 DUI cases for cannabis. Thank you for doing that. Other interesting news, Mayor Johnson is in a battle with Governor Pritzker over, simply put, hemp and cannabis regulation. This is pretty interesting. Normally, they're on the same page, but Governor Johnson wants less regulation on hemp and Pritzker wants more, so they're kind of battling right now. So we're going to see how this heats up, because it's definitely heating up here, even though it's snowing outside, but figuratively it's heating up in Chicago. And it's my birthday today and it's snowing. Guess how old I am in the comments. One last thing to finish up this segment. Elgin, Illinois had over 10,000 reported exposure THC related calls for cannabis that put people hospitalized and kind of messed people up. So long story short, because of all those calls, they banned THC edibles in Elgin, Illinois, population of about 110,000 people. But that sums up the news for Chicago. I'm Mark Allen, the Chicago Clone Guy. This is Bird reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
Now let's check in with Tina Tasaka in Nevada and get an update on the emerging influence of the tribal nations in the cannabis industry.
I'm Tina Tasaka with 420 Technologies, and this is the Nevada and Tribal Nations Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. The Indigenous Cannabis Industry Association leadership is heading to Las Vegas for the Res 25 Economic Summit presented by the National Center for American Indian Enterprise Development, and they will champion the growth of Native participation in the cannabis and hemp industries. The event is comprised of tribal leaders, members of Congress, state and local officials, and CEOs on a national platform. After parties will take place one evening at tribally owned Nuwu Dispensary and Consumption Lounge in downtown Las Vegas. The conference is being held at Caesar's Palace March 10th through the 13th. I'll be there. There is fantastic humanitarian work in Las Vegas. Through the Las Vegas Chamber of Cannabis, I was informed about this amazing woman and executive director, Shauna McQueen, whose daily passion takes in donations and gives out donations, serving homeless communities in downtown and the tunnels. On any given night, they may pass out 100 hot meals, socks, batteries, 120 water bottles, canned goods, and more. They thrive from partners and donations. You can follow them on IG, Holy Smoke Vegas. They are a 501c nonprofit plus 100% volunteer based. The Chamber of Cannabis is a supporter and sponsor. During a late February shooting investigation near I-11 and the 215 in Northwest Las Vegas, it led to an arrest of Christopher Christman on March 5th. While searching for a weapon, detectives found 41 pounds of illegal cannabis in his possession. Christman now faces multiple charges, including assault with a deadly weapon and possession charges. That's it for the Nevada highlights and tribal nations. I'm Tina Tasaka with 420 Technologies and Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
One of the biggest challenges in any legal cannabis market is dealing with the various compliance and regulations that every state has in place. Some, like here in Massachusetts, have some very unfair rules that they continue to perpetuate. For instance, you have to pay for different fees and licenses for the same business. Also, for instance, if you have a dispensary for adult use and want to get a medical license too, you have to pay separate fees for each dispensary location you are licensed to operate in. We'll have a more detailed report on the situation in the Bay State in our next block. But at least Massachusetts is not alone with issues with their regulatory bodies. Christopher Bright has the story of one such issue in Maryland. Here he is.
Welcome to Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I'm Christopher Bright from The Enlightened Voice, bringing you this week's top cannabis headlines. Renee Coleman, owner of Bud and Mary's LLC, is calling out Harford County's officials for delaying her dispensary's opening. She says she can't secure a location because the county's council won't give her the go-ahead. Coleman was awarded a state dispensary license in August of 2024. Maryland gives license holders 18 months to open, but the 6 months in, she says she's still stuck with nothing but a logo. I'm very, very worried, Coleman told WJZ. We've had no communication from the county council, and what am I supposed to do? Despite multiple attempts to meet with her officials, Coleman says she's been ignored. The county, however, claims its hands are tied. They proposed legislation to allow dispensaries, but the council voted it down, blocking permits. Coleman has already invested $20,000 and says this is unacceptable. We followed all of the rules and we just want to do what the law allows, she said. With no progress at the county level, Coleman's next move is to take the fight to the state. And this week's content creator is Gina from Quality Vibes Canna. Her inspiring rags to riches journey highlights the power of self-belief and hard work. She designs merchandise for Get to the Joint and Trappin' Manufacturing, as well as uniforms for many medical cannabis companies. Check out her amazing work on her Instagram at Quality Vibes Canna. And this has been this week's Maryland's Cannabis Report. I'm Christopher Bright, the enlightened voice, reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
That'll do it for the B block. We have our final section of this week's news coming up. In the C block, we will tell you about an unfair arrest of a beloved caregiver advocate in New Zealand who has busted last week and caused a countrywide protest. Cannabis Coast to Coast News continues after this.
It's a whole new world of weed out there, isn't it? Everyone is learning new ways to titrate, ingest, consume, imbibe, and engage with this plant medicine we call cannabis. Now, let me tell you my cannabis story. You know, I've had 4 major surgeries in the past 23 years and suffer from osteoarthritis with a variety of metal parts in my body and one on deck. Now, thanks to those chronic pain issues, I've been a medical patient in Massachusetts for almost 10 years now. I remember my first trip to a dispensary just outside of Boston, and I told the bud tender I didn't want to smoke it anymore. So I tried edibles, then tinctures, then vaping, and now if I'm going to smoke, I only use the Weegits filtration system. What? The Weegits.com, Weegits, that's weed, W-E-E-D, G-E-T-S.com, is where you'll find the planet's coolest product that cools the smoke from everyone's favorite flower. The guy that started this was a pretty good medical device manufacturer, and he created this maze pipe that cools the smoking process from 1300 degrees Fahrenheit upon inflammation down to just 90 degrees when it reaches your mouth. That's right, 1300 down to 90. That's why this maze pipe is amazing. Now, add in the code of PCMTV and you get 15% off. So just go to Weegits.com and check out the best way to enjoy a cooler smoke with less coughing and hacking and more peace of mind.